Last week we shared message part 1 on Let's Show Off God. And I told you then that we would be having a special Mother's Day and would take a break from part 1, and next Sunday we'll deal with part 2. You all got to follow me now because I'm starting a series today. And then we'll jump over next Sunday, and the following Sunday pick up the series. The series is Climbing Life's Mountains. Today we're going to use the scriptures that were shared earlier out of Genesis chapter 16 and Genesis 21. We're going to consider a mother's testimony. Some mountains seem higher than they are. Some mountains seem higher than they are. Objects in life's rear view mirror may appear larger than they are or were. When I look back on my childhood, I remember some things as being very large. I remember riding my bicycle on our front porch. And it was so large that I could ride my bike and we could also have a swing on it. Young people, ask your mamas, your grandmamas what a swing is. might need to even tell you what a front porch is. But that memory is in my mind. But some years after we moved from my hometown and moved from the old house, I decided to go back to the old neighborhood and drove by the old house. It still had the front porch there. But it was not now through my matured eyes as large as it seemed when I was a child. I've had other experiences like that where there were what I would call romantic memories as a young person. And when I got older, I had a different understanding. You see, as a child, sometimes things seem bigger than they are as an adult. Sometimes when we are spiritually immature, things appear to us differently than they do when we are spiritually mature. And I discovered that during the course of thinking about this matter of things sometimes look bigger when you're younger than they really were, I came across a neurological condition. Brother Green, this is not a new word, although I may use it in a different way. It is called macropsia. M-A-C-R-O-P-S-I-A. It is a neurological condition that affects human visual perception, in which objects appear to be larger than they are. And therefore, it causes the person with this condition to then translate into feeling smaller than they really are. Through their human eye, this neurological condition makes them believe that what they are looking at is somehow larger than it really is, and therefore it translates through their mind as making them feel smaller. That's what happens to us in life. That has been my experience, and I'm sure it has been some of your experience. And what I understand about this condition is that it is not a physical problem with the eyes, it's a perception problem. Somebody looking at me right now today, someone listening in on what I'm saying, you are struck with spiritual micropsia. You're looking at something that is in your pathway, something that has come across your life, and it appears as if it is very large. And as you face it, you somehow feel small or little in comparison to what you are facing. But I discovered that the bane, let me spell that for some of you, B-A-N-E, which means things that ruin or spoil. The bane and the blessing are often near each other. The things that will spoil your life and mess up your life is not so far away from what God will give you as a blessing. Sometimes you won't get that until you look in the rearview mirror, when you look at what appeared to be a bad experience, and when you turn around, you discover that God used it in some way to bless you. So when we look at this, I believe that oftentimes mountains and sometimes the wilderness are near each other. That you may have a mountaintop experience for a while, but soon and very soon there will be a valley or a wilderness through which you will travel. And so then we have to be careful about being tempted by what they tried to get Jesus to do on the Mount of Transfiguration when they were there with Jesus. They said, can't we stay up here a little longer? Sometimes we have so much fun on the mountain that's all we want. But I discovered that you need some sunshine and some rain to grow some things. And oftentimes, if you are looking through real spiritual eyes, you will discover that bad things and good things sometimes happen near each other. So you should never make a life-changing decision based on one bad day, because there are other days that will come. That's what Hagar, Sarai's Egyptian maidservant, Abraham's second wife, Ishmael's mama, had to discover in the midst of her journey, as we find her in our texts, Genesis 16 and Genesis 21. You see, that's when the Lord looked in on her situation and had the angel to raise a question to her after she had been mistreated by Sarai. The question was, Hagar, where have you come from and where are you going? So Hagar had to figure out what had happened in her past and what she hoped for in her future. She had to become certain about that. You see, it is important for us to know from whence we have come in order to get to where we are going. We have to be certain about where God is carrying us. And I came across a statement from a man, Bill McNabb, who actually is a CEO of Vanguard Investments. And in speaking about the economic situation, he made this statement. He said, uncertainty is the enemy of recovery. And that struck me. That is applicable to our life circumstance. That if you are uncertain about some things and you face trials and tribulations in your life, you will have a difficulty recovering from the banes. You see, you can get caught up in what goes wrong in your life, and it does not fit in the pattern or the way that you believe God is dealing with you, and you will get caught up in what is bad. if you don't know where you have come from, you don't know where you're going, you're just existing and you're just wandering around your circumstance. Look at Hagar. She went from the mountain peak of becoming Abraham's wife, not just a concubine, to being pregnant with his son, to the wilderness of being mistreated by Sarai, and running away to the wilderness. On her way to the same place between the Red Sea and Marah where Israel had murmured with Moses. She went from the wilderness again to the mountain peak. She went to a wilderness from the mountain peak when Abraham kicked her out at the insistence of his wife, Sarai. You see, Sarai was trying to do like some of us do. Sarai tried to intervene in God's business. God had promised them that they would be blessed and he would give special children to them or a special son to them. And Sarai believed that she was so old that Lord must have made a mistake. So she decided that she would give her maidservant to her husband to go and have sex with her to get her pregnant so that she then could take over the child Ishmael. And it happened. Brothers, it happened. She went to Abraham and said, why don't you go and sleep with her? It's all right with me. And it happened. He did not debate. He did not argue. He did not have a problem. I can imagine that he said, well, baby, if you insist. So it happened. And when it happened, she got pregnant. She had this child. And Abraham then got blamed because she said, it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't pressured me so to have a son. And so here we have a situation where she now gets upset because when she has this son, Ishmael becomes, she looks down at Sarai because now she's the one with the child. And Sarai is not. So she gets kicked out and she goes from mountain to valley, from mountain to wilderness. And if we agree that that is a picture or perhaps a metaphor for our lives, that each of us travels from peak to valley, from mountain to wilderness, we then could say that there is a wilderness that each of us will go through. As a matter of fact, you might be in one now, or you might be headed to one. You may have just come out of one. And Jesus made this fact clear because he said these words in John 16:33, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. You will have many trials, and sorrows, and tribulations, and tests. There will be people who will misunderstand you. There will be people who will criticize you. There will be people who will talk about you. There will be people who will judge you unfairly in the wilderness. But this morning, let's assume that Hagar comes to Austin, and David Chapel in particular. And she offers us some advice on this 2013 Mother's Day, and she is familiar with the Shirelles song. Mama said there'd be days like this. And so then, here is what Mama Hagar says. Life may be of peaks and the wilderness, but God peeks in on us. And when God peeks in on us, God knows your address. That's what Mama Hagar comes to us today. That's what Mama, somewhere around here, you've said to your son, you said to your daughter, God knows your address. You see, when we look at these texts, what we see is that God sent his angel to find Hagar when she had run away from her bad situation. And she was found, the text says, beside a spring of water in the wilderness. And then later in chapter 21, when there were some issues with her son, Ishmael, and with her running away again or being forced out again, you hear it said that God had heard the boy's voice from the place where he was. You see, God knows your address. God knows where you are, and God, as with the case of Hagar, will send his angels to give you mercy and a plan of blessing that he has in store for you. The angel finds Hagar. He was looking for her because God had told him to go look for her. He knew her address, and he found her at a particular place in the wilderness near a spring. A wilderness with a spring of water, hidden water, in a wilderness in the desert, stored up blessings that were hidden in the midst of a wilderness. See, that's where we miss it. God knows your address. When you are in a wilderness situation, God has a well of water already there, stored up, waiting to bless you in some way. Here, we see that the wilderness is a temporary place. Somebody needs to write that down today. I've got a pen here. I'll let you use it. It's a temporary place because sometimes we get tempted to stay in the wilderness because we are at a point of wanting to give up. We're at a point of wanting to resign ourselves to our situation. We are finding it difficult to even pray, and our faith becomes challenged. Our hope is almost gone. But the wilderness is an address. For a limited period of time, it is not to be your residence. Some of us want to camp out and stay. That's when we have a pity party that lasts too long. We are in a wilderness situation and we just don't want to leave. And here we see again, God finds not only Hagar, but he hears the voice of Hagar's son at a particular situation. Did y'all not see the headlines this week? There was a garment worker. Her name was Reshma. She was found in the rubble of the collapse of the 8-story garment building on May 10th in Savar, Bangladesh. She was in her wilderness. And in the midst of her wilderness, the record says that she cried out, "Save me." That cry out led to a rescue some 17 days after the building had collapsed. The rescuers found her this past Friday afternoon in Bangladesh under all of the debris and all of the collapse of the building, and they saw a pipe moving. It turned out that it was Reshma who was shaking the pipe from below, trying to gain attention. "Save me," the rescuers heard her shouting out. And then one of the rescuers asked her this question: "Would you like a drink of water?" Before Reshma made the noise, the rescuers didn't know where she was. She had to make some noise and had to shake the pipe, had to cry out. But you see, that's how men rescue you. But not so with God. Whether or not you make a noise, If you're running from a bad situation, if you are weak, if you are helpless, if you are in need, God knows right now your address. God can find you right now in your situation. God can come up to your proverbial door and knock on it and announce himself to you. Mama said there'll be days like this. But Mama's trying to give you some advice today. Mama's trying to tell some of you. Mama's trying to say that God knows your address. Yes, you might be in a wilderness. You might be experiencing some problems. You might be in a valley. But God knows your address. Not only does God know your address, but God also knows your afflictions. Mama said there'll be days like this. She tried to shield you when you were younger. She tried to deal with you in such a way so that you wouldn't get harmed, so you wouldn't have danger. She tried to protect you from others and from circumstances. But Mama should have told you there would be days like this. We can see it here in the text because of what had happened in Hagar's life. She had some affliction. We see in the text out of chapter 16, it says, the Lord has heard your afflictions, Hagar. God has heard. God knows what's going on with you. She had been kicked out now. We are into chapter 21. She had been kicked out. And in the Hebrew language, the description of the verb means that she was forced out. She was, in their times, divorced now from Abraham. She starts traveling south. She possibly is trying to go back home to Egypt, but somehow she wanders around. She goes astray in the wilderness, and she loses her way. Hagar wanders in the wilderness until her supplies run out. You see, Abraham, at the behest of his wife, kicked her out, put some supplies on her shoulder, gave her a water skin full of water, and told her and Ishmael to go on their way. As you would imagine, Abraham reluctantly went along with it. And so we see her now in chapter 21. Her supplies have run out. She's despondent. She's exhausted. And she abandons her son, puts him under a bush, the shade of a bush, because she has nothing else now, and she does not want to see her son die. So she then moves away from him. The text says about a bow shot from her, about 100 yards from her. He's under a tree, and she's sitting back over there, and it says that she didn't want to see him die, and she burst into tears. But God heard the boy's voice. Then the angel of God spoke to her, Hagar, what's wrong? You see, at this point, anxiety had taken her over. But she had not yet read Philippians 4 and 6. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition and with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. You'll have some afflictions, but you don't need to let the anxiety of it become so overwhelming that it takes control of your life. And you see, it says that her son cried out. We should not take that for granted, because I remember reading an article in the Reader's Digest that said that there was a boy who had gotten lost in a desert wilderness area, and he could not cry out. But there was a man that found him, and the man made this statement. The man said, the Holy Spirit led me to the boy. You see, God always has a ram in the bush for you. Why did he cry? Because the water had run out. You see, you got to be careful about relying too much on the bottle. Y'all take that however you want to take it. They believed that the bottle, the water skin with the water in it, was enough to carry them through the wilderness. But you see, what man provides will run out on you. And God was still there with them. And God came along and had the angel to raise this question, Hagar, what's wrong with you? Some translations say it this way. I kind of like it in this translation. Hagar, what aileth you? What aileth you? As if he didn't know. What aileth her was that she thought she was losing her son in the wilderness. She was powerless to help her son. She was stupefied with despair. She put him under a shrub. She sat him away 100 yards. She thought he was going to die. She could not even pray. Footnote. She could not even pray. Children of mamas, don't always count on mama praying for you. Mama might be going through her own wilderness. And mama may not be able to pray for you. So mamas, y'all need to start teaching your children how to pray for themselves. It's interesting to me that Hagar had burst out into tears. The text does not say that God heard her cries, but that God heard the boy's cries. You see, mamas, y'all ought to take some comfort. When your children start moving away, if you taught them how to pray, just be assured that God will hear their prayers even if you don't hear their prayers. God knows your afflictions. And so the question I raise to you today is, what's wrong with you? What's ailing you? What's afflicting you? What's making you anxious? A man by the name of John Flavel made this statement. He said, man's extremity is God's opportunity. Sometimes God has to break us down before he can get us up. Sometimes he has to put us through the dirt before we can get up. And because God is an all-knowing Father, you can be assured that God will come to you, and there's nothing that can happen to you that escapes his notice. That's good news. But what's really good news is not only that God knows your address and God knows your affliction, but God also will never leave you alone. Mama said there'll be days like this. And mamas and daddies, if we can also rest assured in believing that God will not leave our children alone. Because all we can do is raise them. In the midst of being imperfect, all we can do is make deposits in their lives. All we can do is the best we can do. Then it gets to the point where they've got to fly on their own. But God will not leave them or you alone. Look at what it says. The text says that the angel told Hagar, get up, help the boy up, and support him, for I will make him a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. Here was God's opportunity at Hagar's extremity. She thought it was over. There was no water. She was tired. She was waiting to die. And Hagar was about to be taken over by spiritual macropsia. She started looking at her situation, and it looked much larger than it was. And here it is that God opens her eyes. And God does not strengthen her to do anything new or fresh. It's something that's already done. Right there in the wilderness. Right there where the boy is under the shade bush. Right there where she's crying and bursting into tears. Just a little distance from the problem was the blessing. Right there in the midst of the wilderness was the water. And when she discovered that the water was there, it says she went over, filled the water skin, gave the boy a drink, and God was with the boy and he grew. I don't know about you, but I've had those moments in life when God has had to open my eyes because I was in a wilderness place and I had not seen the water that was nearby because I was so caught up in what I was facing that I couldn't see the blessing that God had already provided. It was nothing new he had to do. The blessing was already there. I'm just talking about me. I'm just saying. I'm just saying for myself. I can't tell your story. I know it by my story, but as I look back, I'm about to end now. As I look back, my testimony, you see, is the same as Mama Hagar's. I know for myself now that God does know my address. God does know my afflictions. And God will not leave me alone. So I can say like Marvin Sapp says, I can say like Marvin Sapp, never would have made it. Without you, I never would have made it. Where's a cordless mic? I never would have made it without you, because all I want to do now, I just need to talk to the Lord as I take my seat. Can I sit down and just talk to the Lord as I forget it? Can I just talk to the Lord? You see, I never would have made it. No, Marvin, no, I don't really want to say that. I don't really want to say I never would have made it. I want to say I never could have made it without you. I would have lost it all. That's what Marvin says. I'm just borrowing Marvin's song, but I'm talking to the Lord. I would have lost it all. But now I see you were there for me. I'm stronger, even though my body is weak. I'm wiser, even though my brain is the same size. I'm better, though I struggle with sin. No, not just better. I'm much better when I look back. Over all you brought me through, I can now see you were the one I held on to. I would have lost my mind a long time ago if it had not been for you, but I made it through my storm and my test because you were there to carry me through my mess. I would have lost my mind. I'm just talking about me. I'm just saying I would have lost my mind. I would have given up, but you were there, right there for me. I've discovered that some mountains seem higher than they really are. Some valleys and wilderness places appear to be more desolate than they really are, because we can get so caught up and consumed by the bad things we are going through that just a little distance, just go a piece of the way, God has a blessing right there for you. I'm trying to help somebody this morning. You're going through something. You're trying to figure out what God can do new. Seems not to be working for you. You've tried to intervene. You've tried to come up with your own ways of handling it. You've tried to resolve it yourself. You're in a wilderness. It is fact. You are in a wilderness, but God knows you're there. You don't have to tell God. God knows you're there. God hears your cries. God hears your afflictions. God hears your anxiety. He knows right now that you're sitting here glad that you have a respite from your problem. You're here today enjoying the songs and enjoying the dance and listening to the preaching, and God has given you a respite from your bad situation. You're glad about it that you could just get to the church house today. But you know that when this moment ends, you got to go back to the wilderness. God says, look around your wilderness. There might be something right there that I've already provided for you. I've got a blessing right there. And even if you stay in the wilderness for a while, know that I will not leave you alone. Are you here today? The screen's telling you what you need to do. If you don't know Jesus through a personal relationship, here's the question. Are you certain that if you were to die tonight that you would go to heaven? If you get anxious just with me asking the question, you are not certain. If you aren't certain where you're going, God offers himself. You know, you may be new to Austin. You may be new to Central Texas. You may be new to East Austin, North Austin, West Austin, South Austin, Pflugerville, Round Rock, Buda, Elgin, Mena. You might be new to those places. And maybe you've come to David Chapel and you've kind of checked us out. Maybe you wanted to wait around to see who I was and how I looked and what I said before you made your decision. Maybe you're saying, I just thought I'd drop by and just check y'all out. Maybe God speak. I would love to be your pastor. I would love to serve you. And we would love to love on you. If God is speaking to you, you need to come on down. The screen is inviting you with the finger. Just come on down right now. Just come on down. God is saying something to you. Just come on down. Maybe you're saying that you like a smaller situation where you can get to know the pastor. But I'm just here today to tell you that David Chapel can tell you, you can get to know your pastor. If you want to get to know him, you can get to know your pastor. I'm just trying to help somebody today. God wants you to make sure that you are in his kingdom. And then we invite you to be a part of this church. We aren't perfect. No church is perfect. But I can tell you one thing. We are striving. We're striving to do the right thing. You'll find some lovely folk. You know how I know you're becoming a part of a good church? I was away since November. Didn't step on the east side. Couldn't come on the east side. Couldn't get in this building. But this church kept going. The members kept coming. They kept loving each other, hugging each other, giving them money. They didn't need me to stand because they are grounded in the Lord God. They know who their Savior is. This is a good church. This is a good church. It's a loving church. It's a great church. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. Reverend Paulette, why don't you come and pray? If you need us to pray for you, there's a form. Some of you already filled those out. Continue to fill those out. Get them up here to the preacher, and he'll pray for you. But you know what? Oh, man, the temptations have come back. I think they want to say something. I think they want to give Mama Hagar's testimony in song. I never would have made it. Never could have made it without you.